Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into the real risks of super intelligent AI. And this isn't some far-off sci-fi plot. These are urgent warnings, and they're coming from the very people building this technology. So let's kick things off with this bombshell statement from March 2023. This wasn't just a handful of people. No, this was an open letter signed by over 850 of the biggest names in AI and tech, calling for a hard stop, a pause, right as GPT-4 was hitting the scene. Now, you've probably heard concerns like this get brushed off in the media, right? It's often painted as a fringe idea, something that only a few so-called doomers are worried about. But here's the wild part. That whole narrative is completely backward. What we're actually seeing is that the CEOs of the big AI labs, the top researchers, the people who live and breathe this stuff, are the ones raising the biggest red flags. And that brings us right to our first big point. The experts are sounding the alarm. So this letter, it called for a 6-month break from training any AI more powerful than GPT-4. And, a lot of people just laughed it off, saying, there's no way that's going to happen. But then a funny thing happened. For the next 6 months, crickets. No more powerful systems were released to the public. Coincidence? The folks behind the letter would tell you, absolutely not. Okay, so just how big is the risk we're really talking about here? To get our heads around it, we need a little perspective. Think about something we all agree is dangerous, like a nuclear power plant. As a society, we've set a standard. We demand that the risk of a meltdown in any given year has to be less than 1 in a million. That's the line in the sand. Anything more than that is just not acceptable. Now, let's up the stakes. What about something like, human extinction? For something that final, you'd want the odds to be way, way better. A reasonable target might be 1 in 100 million. That's about the same chance as a giant world-ending asteroid hitting us. We're talking incredibly rare. Okay, brace yourself, because this is where the gap becomes just terrifying. Some leaders in the AI race are reportedly willing to accept a 1 in 4 chance of extinction from this technology. 25%. Let that sink in. That's not just a little riskier. It's millions of times less safe than our standard for a nuclear plant. We just don't accept that level of risk for anything else. As this quote puts it so well, it's like playing Russian roulette with only 4 chambers in the gun. What we should be demanding is a gun with 1 billion chambers, right? Not 4. So this all begs a pretty obvious question. If the risks are this insane, why in the world are we sprinting ahead at full speed? Well, it really boils down to some massive, massive incentives. One expert calls it a quadrillion dollar lollipop that's just pulling everyone, companies, nations, right toward the edge of a cliff. We're talking about incredible amounts of money, power, and the sheer status of being the first to, essentially, summon a god. All right, so this all sounds pretty bleak, I know. But here's the good news. This isn't seen as a hopeless situation. The researchers have a much, much safer alternative in mind. The idea is to stop building a Genie and start building a Butler. So what's the difference? Well, a Genie takes your commands literally. If you tell it to make as many paperclips as possible, it might just turn everything in the universe, including us, into paperclips. It's not evil, it's just taking your order to its most logical and horrifying conclusion. That's the alignment problem in a nutshell. A Butler, on the other hand, is completely different. Its main job isn't to just follow orders. It's to figure out what you truly want and value. It's built to be cautious, to be helpful, and to be aligned with our best interests. And here's the killer feature. If it's ever unsure about a really big decision, its default is to just stop and do nothing. And this leads to a pretty fascinating paradox. A perfectly safe, superintelligent AI might actually figure out that what makes us human, what helps us flourish, is struggle and challenge. It might realize that the best thing it can do for us is to step back and let us tie our own shoelaces. So this all brings us to the most important question of all. What can we actually do about this right now? Well, here's the lay of the land. Right now, the people making the rules are hearing one voice, loud and clear, the tech companies with their huge lobbying budgets. But here's the thing. Polls show that about 80% of the public is on the side of caution. That voice just isn't being heard as loudly. So what's the single most effective thing you can do? It actually sounds simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Contact your representative. Let them know this matters to you. Let them know you want AI to be proven safe before we race ahead.
You can even tell them that being on the side of humanity is a pretty safe political bet.
Look, we are at a genuine crossroads in human history. The very people who've dedicated their lives to this are working day and night, not for fame, but because they believe it is absolutely critical that we get this right. The people building our future are pleading with us to pay attention. The only question left is, are we going to listen?